Hey, it's Ryan Seacrest. Life comes at you fast, which is why it's important to find some time to relax. A little you time. Enter Chumba Casino. With no download required, you can jump on anytime, anywhere for the chance to redeem some serious prizes. So treat yourself with Chumba Casino and play over 100 online casino-style games, all for free. Go to ChumbaCasino.com to collect your free welcome bonus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Friday, May the 3rd. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Greg Smith is back at the scene of the crime producing this come out with an edition of the program. So, if you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, it's toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So, Greg Smith, like many excited Leaf fans today, as they stave off elimination with a 2-1 win last night against the Boston Bruins, forcing Game 7 tomorrow evening. I believe it's 9:30 Island time. And Willie Nylander, a couple of goals when it counts. One, a seeing eye shot late in the second period, and then a nice move on the breakaway in the third to seal it. So, Game 7 tomorrow night. I'm actually looking forward to it. No Austin Matthews again. Sometimes when your big star is out, it really does cement the team unity. You know, people realize they got to pick up some of the slack because the big sniper is out of the lineup. But anyway, the Leafs force Game 7. And Bob Cole will be laid to rest this afternoon, 2 p.m. at the St. Thomas's Anglican Church, downtown St. John's. And we still will welcome and continue to welcome your reflections and stories about the late, great Bob Cole. And a quick random sports note. On this date, 1980, Texas Ranger Ferguson Jenkins, Canadian, Hall of Famer, became the 4th Major League pitcher to win 100 games in both the American League and the National League. And off we go. So yesterday here in the program, we had a conversation with Ken Dix. He's a pharmacist out in Central, talking about the eye injection drugs Eylea and Lucentis and the fact that they had been allegedly split. And consequently, with that, which is totally against the law, contravenes the Canada's Health Act, and it has resulted in some contamination and consequently infections. A lady named Imelda called earlier in the week, and she said that she did indeed get a big or major infection, she says, as a result of the dose splitting. Dr. Chris Jackman, he's a well-respected ophthalmologist, eye surgeon here in the city of St. John's. He'd like to come on the program this morning. We exchanged notes overnight. He'd like to come on this morning to talk about how safe it is to get these eye injections to treat macular degeneration, which impacts millions of Canadians. So Dr. Jackman is going to give his perspective here. I have some information that he has shared with me, but I'll let him share it with you when he makes his appearance on the program, which I think is pretty early on here this morning. So it's a big story. And I think the summary of Dr. Jackman's hopes this morning is to allay the fear that may be out there for folks suffering who might forego treatment because they've heard these stories. So we'll get down to it with Dr. Jackman coming up shortly. So the province yesterday, NL Health Service, is talking about the plan to reduce the reliance on travel nurses. Okay, I mean, for one thing, it costs exorbitant amount of money. This year, about $70 million will be spent on travel nurses. They're going to see an already a reduction, plans for more, and of course, into the future, they're hoping to have it down to around 30 by 2026. What exactly that plan looks like? I suppose the obvious dovetail with recruiting and most importantly, retaining the staff we already have in place. Then I don't know if they spoke to it yesterday about the non-compete that saw travel nurses leave our public system and having to wait 12 months to re-enter after leaving the travel agency. So we'll see exactly how that plan is going to play out, but a couple of curious things inside it. It's quite likely into the future there's going to be the need for travel agency nurses to work in more rural, remote parts of the province. Now, there is such a thing as a nursing locum that the Registered Nurses Union talks about. People have had great experiences, whether it be going to Labrador to work for a few weeks or a couple of months, whatever the case may be. But then they go on to talk about one of the notorious contracts that had been signed with Canada Health Labs. So the Health Authority had 2 contracts with that agency. They have now expired. And David Donald went on to say that sourcing from other agencies will save the province $20 million alone, which begs the question. How did we arrive at a point where we signed 2 contracts with the most expensive agency, allegedly the most expensive agency in the country? So great. If we're going to be able to save $20 million by using other agencies, then why weren't we using the other agencies to begin with? It feels to me like we unnecessarily spent $20 million, maybe $20 million, in addition to what was, as Minister Osborne calls, the necessary evil of having travel agency nurses, which I always find to be a curious choice of words, given that these nurses aren't evil, but that's how sometimes the branding comes across. But anyway, you want to take it on. And inside the world of, when you have a reduction in the number of nurses, and every healthcare professional, it leads to extended wait times, delays, postponements of surgery, people who do belong in a long-term care centre, but they can't because they don't have the staffing there to accommodate more residents, There's a report out there talking about the actual cost, of course, to quality of life, which is obvious. The stress and anxiety of waiting for one procedure or another is blatant. But this is about lost wages and productivity. Last year, in 2023, there was an estimated loss of $3.5 billion in lost wages and productivity. So on top of quality of life impact, that's meaningful. So after you even get your procedure, with all those lost wages and the productivity for your industry, your business, then it makes recovery even more arduous. Because it's not just about physical recovery when you've been sick, it's everything that goes with it. Your mindset, your mental state, your wages, the ability to get back to work after recovery as opposed to forcing yourself back in there. So that's an interesting number that someone provided this morning. And also yesterday, talking about the education system. And in the most recent budget, there was indeed $3 million set aside to hire more student assistants, 104 of them full-time equivalents. Okay, important position, no doubt about it. But lost in this is that the hours that they would spend on the job, about half of it will be on the bus. Of course we need people to monitor the buses, because there are some shenanigans and foolishness and maybe some violence that happens on the buses, which is unfortunate, and it can't be the bus driver's job. We want the bus driver to be looking out the windshield down the road. So yeah, we need someone on the bus. But the real concern for student assistants and the students that need them is in the classroom. So it's great that they're going to be hired, and hopefully that's effective. But to know that somewhere in the neighborhood of 50% of their job will be on a bus as a monitor, okay. There's also, you'll see some ads popping up on your social media feed from NL schools trying to hire more than 250 permanent teaching positions. At this moment in time, there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 600 retirees who are operating as substitute teachers in the province. We do know that there's fewer graduates coming out of Memorial University's education school than in years past. So who are these teachers? If we're graduating fewer people, and there's so many not only already retired, but on the verge of retirement, when we talk about healthcare professionals, they'll talk about going to India to recruit nurses, Ireland to recruit doctors, those types of things. Where are these teachers coming from? I don't know. Maybe Trent Langdon or someone else can fill in that blank for me, but they're making the attempt anyway. We got to reduce class size. We have to talk about the class composition and all the rest. Okay. So one thing we do know is that it didn't really change much for me insofar as where I work or how I work, but the pandemic really did interrupt the workplace. I have friends that have never gone back full-time into the office, now sporadically in and out for meetings and when they need to see some of their colleagues. But for many, working from home, that trend is going to be hard to buck. On the federal scene, for the civil servants. So we know that the government let them work from home for quite a long time. They changed it back March last year to require them to come into the office a couple of days a week. And now, what the unions are calling out of the blue and without consultation, the federal government is saying you have to be in the office 3 days a week. So the unions are really fired up about this one. They say they're not going to take this lying down. Different comments that are very closely linked coming from whether it be the PSAC group or the Canadian Association of Professional Employees and others. So they say they're going to maybe even consider filing legal action here. All right. Public support has always been important to organized labor, of course. But with all the concerns that we all share, with cost of living pressures, and yes, recovering from the pandemic, and everything else, price of groceries, fuel, insurance, cell phone, whatever it is, I don't know how much public support will be on this front. Now, some of you, of course, will say, absolutely, stand up to the big guy, stand up to the government, do what you think is right. But 3 days a week in the office doesn't really feel like an untoward request for a full-time employee. Executives are going to have to be in the office 4 days a week. That said, the federal government at the exact same time said they're going to probably somewhere in the neighborhood of half their building portfolio, office space for their public servants. So, okay, and we've already heard that even with the return to work in March last year of 2 days a week, there was people cramming into cafeterias, working in offices that weren't actually offices, but maybe more in the neighborhood of a broom closet, then the lack of desks. So fair enough. I think it's fair enough that they're going to be required to work 3 days a week minimum in the office, but at the exact same time have to be provided with adequate workspace. So how does that jibe, federal government? You're going to half your portfolio of office space, bring more people into the office. So I get it. And as I said, I don't see it being an unfair request or requirement to be in the office 3 days a week. But how do they set it up so that it's actually adequate workspace so that people actually do their work? I think the bulk of Canadians, I would suggest, think that it's absolutely time for people to be back to work. It is difficult dealing with government. It's hard to get someone on the phone. The counter service we've relied on for decades has really gone by the wayside in large part. So whether it be Chris Aylward at PSAC or anyone else who wants to talk about it from any angle, we're happy to take it on. But that's what the feds have said, and back to work they go 3 days a week. Executives, 4 days a week. All right, a few quickies before we get to you. So the CEO of WestJet was in St. John's yesterday talking about WestJet's commitment to the province. All right. Beginning this week, there was the thrice-weekly direct flight from St. John's International to London's Gatwick. That's going to be good for the international traveller. I think it's probably going to see a surge in people visiting from Europe. And that's one thing on the tourism side. And I think it's a good idea. Some $3.7 million has been set aside for all of the airport authorities. We don't really know how much St. John's International's Airport Authority is going to spend in keeping WestJet here. The contract at this moment, or the commitment at this moment in time, is for 3 years. Fair ball. They're also looking at Germany, which would be the number 2 so far as German tourists coming to, or European tourists coming to Canada, and hopefully to this province. Where it gets lost, and I don't know if we're going to hear from Jordan Brown, the NDP member for Lab West, nowhere in the budget was there any talk or consideration about just how extremely costly it is to fly inside the province itself. From Nain to St. John's, from Lab West to St. John's, around $1,500, and much more than that to fly, say, for instance, from Nain to St. John's. So while we're subsidizing this type of business travel and leisure travel, okay, but we do have some domestic concerns that have not been addressed. And WestJet was also asked about regional connectivity, and that's not their focus. That's not part of their strategy. Yes, from Deer Lake to Toronto, Deer Lake to Calgary, they're trying to connect east and west and intercontinental, what have you, but fair ball for people to wonder about the cost to travel inside the province itself. But thrice weekly to WestJet, to London's Gatwick, it'd be nice to know what the breakdown is, or even what the formula is. Is it based on landing fees commensurate with the number of tickets sold? Is there a benchmark there that we can achieve to see a minimal amount of subsidy to WestJet itself? People do, and it's not new for governments provincially or federally to subsidize big business, and WestJet is absolutely part of a big business. But it'd be nice to know a breakdown about just how much money out of the 3.75 is for this one route alone. And of course, it runs until October. You want to talk about it? We can do it. Okay. So let's get into a little bit of what Premier Fury had to say when he addressed the Empire Club in Toronto. I think it was on Monday or Tuesday. So the Empire Club is a pretty interesting organization in and of itself. So they've hosted a bunch of prominent Canadian politicians and business leaders and internationally. Just for a reminder, some of the folks who have presented at the Empire Club: Prince Edward, the Prince of Wales, Winston Churchill, Ronald Reagan, Christopher Plummer, Roberta Bondar, Maureen Forrester, Adrian Clarkson, Margaret Thatcher, Vladimir Putin, Bill Gates, strange, and now Andrew Fury. So while they're talking, healthcare, but a lot of it was really focused in on energy. So talking about our hydro, wind, offshore oil, and inside the world of hydro, apparently we will indeed find out at some point, and hopefully sooner than later, the status of the contract negotiations with the province of Quebec and Hydro-Quebec. Quebec needs it. They 100% do. 15% of their portfolio is at the Upper Churchill. So what will be discussed? Redress from now to back to 69? What the next 16, 17 years look like? Or what it looks like after 41, which is kind of the least of the worries. The equity stakes do not change in 2041. I'm curious, is there going to be any financial moves between today and 41? So that's one thing. Also goes on to talk about carbon capture and carbon sequestration. At the most recent international environmental meeting called COP, I think it was most recent was COP 27 or COP 28, there was a significant number of oil and gas lobbyists in attendance, promoting what? Carbon capture and sequestration. Why? Because it's good for them. It would be what some people refer to as the greenwashing of that industry. And we know the impact that the oil emissions do have on climate change. Well, some people will disagree, but that's where I am. So we're talking about this province's opportunity. and the synergistic opportunities to have this as an actual part of the economy in addition to what people talk about in combating climate change. So Premier Fury says that in our offshore, we have the capacity to store well over a gigaton of CO, which would accommodate the entire carbon output of every province and territory of Canada combined for decades. Okay. Tony Wakeham yesterday in the House of Assembly asking about this, saying, are we jeopardizing things like our fishery to accommodate everyone else's problem, as opposed to our own carbon capture and sequestration, which can be done? We're a little bit out in front of our skis here in some form, because the province just this year committed $6 million over the course of 3 years to examine the opportunity, how it would work, how efficient it would be, and maybe how much it would cost. So maybe there is a massive opportunity offshore. Possibly. Is it greenwashing? Likely. What's the impact on the fishery? Unknown. So the concept is to capture the carbon and inject it into depleted oil wells. They're looking at the exact same thing on the west coast of Canada. In that case, they're talking about capturing the carbon and injecting it into the basalt rock formations underwater. And at 25 years after the injection, it turns into basalt rock. So that's an interesting feature as well. But in this province, what does that really mean? And what kind of economic opportunity is actually there? And yes, importantly, what does that mean for an established industry like the fishery? Add to it amendments to the Atlantic Accord with the potential for offshore wind to come to town. What would be the actual impact with the fishery with that potential industry, which is likely coming at some time into the future if they can find markets for it? But you want to talk about a lot of those big issues, we can do it. A couple of quick ones, maybe not right in front of your concerns today, but interesting nonetheless. So the TD Bank of Canada, they are under several probes, especially from the United States, to talk about their role in anti-money laundering controls and whether or not they've reported a number of suspicious activities, which the regulator has said they should have, and they should have known. So the fine is $9.19 million. TD's actually set aside about $450 million for these probes. They're not the only bank in the country that's been fined for not doing what they should be doing based on the law and the banking regulations to identify money laundering and other suspicious financial transactions. So where were the other ones that came? So CIBC has been taken to task. The Royal Bank was actually announced that there's a $1.3 million penalty against CIBC. So this is all about administrative violations. How does this go on? I mean, one day early the week or last week, we're talking about the fact that Canadian banks do an absolutely poor job and looking at e-banking transfers. You know, when someone's being stalked and harassed, you block their cell phone number, you block them on social media, you try to stay away from them physically. But apparently, people are so committed to harassing their partner or former partner that they're putting nasty messages associated with their e-banking transfer. There was one case they talked about. It was a $1 transfer initially with a threat involved. And then it amped up to $5, and then it was continuous. In the country of Australia, they've actually input some pretty severe legislation, and last year alone, they captured some 1 million messages of threats of violence that did not make it to their intended recipient in an e-bank transfer. I have an idea for CIBC, RBC, TD Bank, whoever else in this country who is not doing what they need to do regarding money laundering and suspicious financial transactions. We've got a great local company you might be interested in, Verifin. That's exactly what they do. Remember, it's only a couple of years ago that NASDAQ spent $2.75 billion American to purchase Verifin, and that's exactly what they do with great success. Let's see that hopefully our banks are playing a role in not only money laundering for organized crime, but apparently some of this is directly related to terrorist organizations. What the hell is going on? All right, very quick before we get to you. So today, the first report coming from the inquiry into foreign interference into our elections. It's been ongoing. I don't know how close the country's been watching, but they had 10 days of hearings. Then there was another couple of days behind closed doors with some classified information to be shared. So they're looking at not only China, but Russia, India, Pakistan. Some of it's been quite revealing. You know, when the government appointed former Governor General David Johnson to be the special rapporteur, which is just a fancy word for representative. So his findings did not think or say that the Liberals had done something untoward and didn't share the information in a timely fashion. But that's not exactly what we hear from CSIS. So the first report coming down today from Commissioner Marie-Josée Olk will be fascinating reading. And it used to be all the rage, captured all the headlines, and then all of a sudden it wasn't important. Look, there's lots of important issues that we need to talk about. But protection of democratic institutions, the integrity and the trust in is probably pretty significant when we talk about the stability of the political system as we know it. Anyway, first report comes down today. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. Let's have a great show. We're going to kick it off this morning speaking with ophthalmologist, eye surgeon, Dr. Chris Jackman, about the concept of splitting the doses of injections to treat macular degeneration. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the program. Let's begin this morning as advertised on line number one. Say good morning to Dr. Chris Jackman. Good morning, Dr. Jackman. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you doing this morning?
I'm very well. Thanks for asking. How about you?
I'm doing quite well. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me on the program. It's great to get a chance to speak with you and sort of hopefully bring some clarity to some of the discussions that have been going on about intravitreal injections.
Yeah, let's do it. So we spoke with Ken Dix yesterday. That's not the first time. We've spoken to a couple of patients who had received an eye injection, consequently got an infection. I understand your concern is to try to allay some fears that might be out there, but let's start with the actual conversation regarding Eylea and Lucentis. So is the assertion that these doses have not been split?
That is correct, Patty. These doses are not split. These doses come in a packaged thing directly from the manufacturer. They're sealed. The packages are sealed. And many of the medications now have changed over the last number of years, probably about past 5 years, in that the medications come from the manufacturer in an actual syringe itself that's pre-filled, ready to be used as injection. So you just put the needle on itself. So it's impossible for them to actually be split in any way whatsoever because they're in a sort of pre-filled syringe.
How do we square this circle? If indeed the numbers of billings did not line up with the number of doses, then how could it be anything other than doses were split? Because the assertion is that the overfilling is part of the packaging. And so you take one dose out and you throw the rest away, as per Bayer's instructions, as per the Canada Health Act. So if the numbers didn't add up, what could be the other explanation?
That's a great question, Patty. I think that's where some of the clarity needs to be sort of shined on this, in that fact that there's many medications that can be used for injection. So we inject medication at the Health Science Center, as an example, using steroids, so Kenalog. So that's a medication that's not a prescription medication. It's on the shelf at the hospital. Each time those injections get done, doctors will bill for the injection, but there's no actual prescription given for the patients. Any other injections that are done at the hospital that are prepared by the hospital itself would not be part of a prescription type process. There's also compassionate programs that are run by the companies that own the medication. So you have Lucentis, which is owned by Novartis, and Bayer, which owns Eylea, and they provide these compassionate medications to give to patients for free. And at one point, Newfoundland had the highest usage of compassionate medications because, unfortunately, we had the worst coverage. So those medications are free medications that were given to patients of this province, and they were not a prescription as such. So they wouldn't line up with a patient's prescription, but yet they'd still be billed as an injection itself. So when you take account all these sort of various sources of medications. In addition to that, just to give you one last one, Avastin is also a medication that's purchased by clinics that's then provided, and they're actually provided to the patients when they come in. So again, no prescription given, but yet the injection is performed and the injection would be billed for by the physician. So those numbers will never line up, and it's because it's impossible for them to do so. So that the idea that they're supposed to line up, it would not actually be correct. It's impossible for them to line up.
Coming from an advanced care specialty pharmacy in Ontario, when there was an inspection done, they found non-approved syringes and labeling, multiple pre-filled syringes identified as Eylea but could not be proved, and without any patient identification. And then the government itself, through access to information, was shown that they were either aware of or should have been aware of that this was possibly happening. And it's not the only province where this has occurred. So the allegations in Ontario, there's a pharmacist in Gloucester, Ontario, a $15 million fine for allegedly vial splitting of Eylea. Then back in Quebec in 2016, Quebec order of pharmacists fined a Montreal pharmacist $50,000, suspended his license for 19 months for dose splitting Lucentis. So it's obviously happened elsewhere. And if it does not happen any longer here, I understand your concern, because as a healthcare professional, you don't want people to forego treatment for their macular degeneration because eventually they're blind. So if it has happened in the past, the assurance would be important going forward that it's no longer happening. And there are other drugs out there, as the one you mentioned, that begins with an A, Avastin, I think is what you called it, right?
That's correct. And Avastin, in fact, there's a couple things I'd like to mention there, but Avastin, in fact, is a split medication in the fact that it comes in an intravenous dose. So it's a large vial that gets split to about, say, 30 different doses, and that's split by all pharmacies, including the pharmacy in Grand Falls that Mr. Dix owns as such. So it's a very common thing that's split all across the country, and that's used. And the reason it's split is because it makes it much, much less expensive. But in regards to the splitting that goes on elsewhere, I mean, that's not a good practice, right? Like, the last thing we want as physicians is to have a medication that could be tainted or cause a problem. We have many, many patients who have this treatment, and they're elderly patients, and they depend upon them for their vision and their sight, and obviously their ability to do things day to day. And so there's nothing we want more than patients to have good outcomes and good vision. And so there's no way we would ever take a risk of using, tainted medications unless it was like Avastin is split in a sterile compounding pharmacy, and it's ensured that it's split. It has a sealed sticker on it, so we know that when it was in the hood, it's actually been sealed and it's been sterilized. So I appreciate that. Other places things have gone on. And as you mentioned, Patty, some governments have looked at the possibility of splitting in order to save money. But as a result, of course, the pharmaceutical companies have changed the way the medications are delivered to prevent governments and other entities from doing that. So really that problem that did exist, say, 10 years ago, it's kind of been counteracted and prevented for that reason alone as such. Because they were pharmaceutical companies were losing money, and that's why they were suing these companies. So that's really been prevented. And as I mentioned or previously to personally, that I've been here for 18 years. I've never seen any splitting of Eylea or Lucentis, and there's new medications like Vabysmo, and there constantly will be these new medications. But I've never seen any splitting of those brand name medications. I've only seen splitting of the Avastin, which is the most common one that's used.
You're the doctor, and I'm glad to hear you've never seen that inside of your clinic and operations. But the Avastin drug is different than Bayer's product because Bayer says quite simply, under no circumstances may a customer multi-dose compound or vial split any Bayer product versus Avastin, which is compounded for exactly that purpose. So the dose splitting was part of their offering as opposed to Eylea and Lucentis. So that's a reasonable difference to draw, isn't it?
Well, actually, Avastin is not, they say that you shouldn't split Avastin either, and it's actually not approved to be used in the eye, so it's an off-label use. So Avastin is not made to be split to be used in the eye. It was made to be used for colorectal cancer, but it was found to have a secondary benefit back in 2005 to be used in the eye for these vascular conditions, and that's why it's used in that fashion. And so that's where that all came from. I did my residency from 2001 to 2006. And during that time, people would go blind without these medications. And it was about 2005 when Avastin came online where we could actually now start to help these patients. And it's been a huge change in regards to blindness prevention and really a game changer for our patients. So we're very, very fortunate to have these medications. But it wasn't until afterwards that we had eye-specific medications that came out. And, of course, they came in a smaller dose. But because of the cost savings that could be found in Avastin, because it was used for another reason and it's an off-label use, that's the reason why it's still being used today, because it's less expensive. And for many patients, it still works well.
Let's just hope that whatever went on in the past, because there are documents from 2015 and 2016 that very clearly, even though they're obviously heavily redacted like many of our access to information requests, it confirmed that dose splitting products were entering and being distributed in Newfoundland and Labrador. And not to derail your overall intent here this morning to, allay fears, and hopefully that's exactly how the listening public hear. But I guess importantly, if we start from today and say, Dr. Jackman has never seen it, here's how it works, and people should not be afraid to get these vision-saving drugs. Good. I think the importance maybe that Ken Dix and others would have is that if we look back from today into 2015, 2016, as far back as 2006, to ensure that we know exactly what happened, who was responsible, and what can be done about it. But I absolutely appreciate, and I think the listening public will appreciate, your stance here this morning that it's safe. Please do not forego treatment because here's how it works, especially in your clinic. So is that a fair characterization of the issues that we're talking about, looking back and consequently looking forward?
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing here. At the end of the day, the reason why I want to talk, and I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity, Patty, and taking these sort of different topics on, is that I want to make sure that patients feel that, these are safe treatments, they are in your best interest, and we don't want people to be fearful of having treatments and therefore losing their vision just for this possibility of a problem that occurred in other parts of the country in the past. Again, I've never seen it here in this province, never heard of it here in this province. I appreciate, the information that's been provided by Mr. Dix, but honestly, we do a lot of these injections and it doesn't make sense. Like for physicians to be using medications that are split, it doesn't make sense to do that. And so that's why I don't think it's ever occurred to my knowledge in the province. But I'm really happy to be able to say that. So I just want to alleviate patients, families, and the patients themselves to say that, hey, this is a really safe treatment. Unfortunately, Patty, as you mentioned, some people do get infections. The rate of infections, anywhere from 1 in 1,000 to 1 in 2,000 injections. And it's really unfortunate that sometimes patients do get these infections. And when you bring up these sort of possibilities of the past, saying that, well, maybe that's the reason I got the infection. And unfortunately, when you're doing any medical treatment, there's a risk of infection. And I just want to alleviate those people as well to say, that's just, the risk itself. It's not from any tampering of medications or inappropriate use of medications. It really is that bad luck. And we really want the best outcomes. We never would probably put people's vision at risk. Because it makes, no sense for us or for our patients as such.
And of course, you're not the only ophthalmologist or eye surgeon in the province or country. So how do you suggest patients talk with their physician? Because, we talk off-label. So I go to my family doctor, I'd like to lose some weight, and I want Ozempic, which of course was created for diabetes treatment, but off-label use for weight loss. And then things like Avastin that you said, I think it was 2005, it was discovered that could be very helpful for macular degeneration. So what questions should they ask? Is it untoward to say to your physician, I've heard these stories from pharmacist Ken Hicks, that dose splitting might have happened in the past. What do you know about it? Have you ever done it? What's the process in your own clinic? Because people will have questions, and not just about this particular issue, because they've heard these conversations on this show, but how treatments are being prescribed, whether it be drugs or otherwise. So what do you suggest patients to do when they're conversing with their doctor? Because an informed patient is possibly a healthier patient.
I 100% agree with you, Patty, and I highly recommend anyone, if has any questions about anything, they should ask. It's always a good idea to be well informed, and I think I would strongly recommend all patients to ask about any of their health treatments because they're their own best advocates. I think that that's very important, and I honestly, want to take this opportunity to sort of tell these things, but I'll be having these conversations directly one-on-one with patients and their families, and I'm more than happy to have those because I think educating patients is an investment in the future. So if you can give them that sort of knowledge, it's going to be very helpful. A lot of people don't realize as well, these medications are particularly what are called cold chain medications, so meaning that they need to be stored at 4 degrees Celsius at all times, or they no longer function. So that's why medications get shipped directly, packed in ice and in coolers to go into the hospital, to go into these special fridges so that they're not sort of sitting at home on a counter or anything else like that, because then they'll no longer be effective. So it's very important for us to have these cold chains. It's tracked, it's logged. And so, there's a lot around sort of controlling these things and best practices to make sure patients have these good outcomes. So just, it is important for patients to be aware of that, and certainly advocating on their behalf is very, very important. But I can tell you, dealing with medications and dealing with people's healthcare is our primary importance, because that's the whole reason we're doing this, basically, is for good outcomes.
Let's hope that every physician, regardless of the drug or the injection, is following best practices, because we know, unfortunately, like in every other industry, in every other walk of life, there's the bad apples that make it difficult for those who are trying to do their level best to inform and to treat their patients to the best of their ability as per their oath. Dr. Jackman, I really appreciate the time. Very quickly, how are the children?
Children are great, Patty. They're still playing hockey.
Good.
I think your amazing coaching back many years ago really sort of set the bar there for them to continue to play. So they're enjoying it. The only thing is they're just getting too big, Patty. Time is going by much too fast, my friend.
Couldn't agree more. Dr. Jackman, I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Patty. I really appreciate it as well. Thank you so much.
Take care. You're welcome. Bye-bye. Here we go, Dr. Chris Jackman. And of course, look, we need to ensure that everything that should be done according with the law and the Canada Health Act and all the rest of it is done by every physician in every discipline across the board. And what has happened in the past, let's hope it's never happened again. But if it has happened, and the documents are pretty clear, that it may indeed have been happening in this province at some moment in time, we have to find out exactly what happened, who was responsible, and what could be done. Let's take a break. But to allay your fears, if you need that type of treatment, go get that type of treatment in consultation with your doctor. Let's take a break. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Melissa, you're on the air.
Hi, how are you, Patty?
I'm doing okay. How about you?
I'm doing okay. So I'm calling because I'm at the 10th city protest down at Benjamin Park. There is a lot going on here this morning, and there's questions that I have that is not being answered. So I decided to call you in hopes that somebody will be able to hear it and answer our questions.
Such as?
Such as the 10th city protest woke up this morning to everything being barricaded, orange fences going up, everything is literally barricaded here. Nobody can get in or out. They pretty much is barricading everything down at this point. Woke up the other morning to signs everywhere. My question is, not everybody can go to a shelter. If they could, they would. There is no shelters available for a lot of people. We had 2 new people from Ontario came here yesterday, and they were pretty much told to come to Tent City because I couldn't do nothing for them because they're not from Newfoundland. So a lot of people that is down to the protest cannot go in shelters. There's a lot of shelters that they can't go in. The shelters they can go in is not available. There's a lot of people that have left right into shelters, but the shelters was not fit. The private-owned shelters was not fit, and they left. So my question is, what are they doing with everybody, and how are they going to make everybody feel safe? There is no shelters available. The shelters are overpacked with people being homeless, and so my question to the government is, at this point, they did say if there was a fire or the ambulance or the police could get in, but they have everything barricaded here this morning. So my opinion is, and question to the government would be, what is the next step to make sure everybody is safe? Everybody have rights no matter if you're homeless or not homeless. The people here are here because they have nowhere to go. Shelters are turning people down.
I mean, there's a lot to this conversation. You know, the obvious first question for me is, it's one thing to disband this encampment and for people to have their tents and themselves removed from the site, but that doesn't answer the question as to where to next. So if it just means...
And that's what they're doing. They're trying to tear it down, so where are they going to put them? My question is, okay, I understand it's next to a playground. They want to get them somewhere, but where next? Where are they going to put them next? They're just going to have them on the streets because there's no shelters available. I was lucky to get myself into a shelter 2 days ago, but there's no shelters available anymore.
Yeah, I mean, for some, the shelter's not actually the answer either. So what's actually happening right this minute? So keeping the barricades up and the fences up and the signs that have been installed. So is anything actually happening?
Right now, yes, there is 2 cops here. They have been coming and trying to pretty much the government tearing people out of their homes. So actions they're trying to tear people out as well. So we have 2 cops that is actually on our side. They are here right now. They have 24-hour now. As of this morning, there's a government worker sits in his vehicle to watch the barricades to make sure that it don't come down. There is 2 cops here that are not leaving till they figure out what's going on because their main concern is, as like the officer just told me, his main concern is, where are they putting everybody? Where are they going? Are you just going to let them be on the streets? Like, what are they doing with people? So there is 2 officers here right now that are not leaving until they can figure out what's going on. But they have been coming in for the last 5 days and sweeping everything out. Most of the tents are pretty much swept out. If they notice that nobody's in it, they try to grab it. There's one guy, 2 people that pretty much just lost everything, their children's stuff and everything when they swept the tent. They swept the tent about 3 days ago. They ended up putting them in a shelter for a night, telling them it would be a better place because we had a lot of rain. When they came back, the tent was gone with all the stuff in it. And we confirmed it was in Ravenel Dump. We got that confirmed.
I appreciate the time this morning, and this was always going to happen. At some moment in time, there was going to be some closure of this particular tent city or tent encampment behind Cloney Building. It was inevitable.
It was happening.
Yeah, and
We
now it's
knew
happening.
it was going to happen, but my main question is where they're going to put people that's going to be safe. Some people cannot go to shelters. Some people are not allowed in shelters. So where are they going to put them to be safe is my main concern.
I appreciate the concern and the time, Melissa. Thanks for the call.
And thank you, Patty, for listening.
You're
Have
welcome.
a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. All right. Interestingly, it just popped up in the corner of my eye, scrolling down through my social media feed, and the conversation with Dr. Jackman. May is Vision Health Month. And this is a tweet coming from the Seniors Advocate. About 75% of vision loss is preventable or treatable. The major age-related eye conditions are cataracts, glaucoma, diabetic retinopathy, and age-related macular degeneration, which is exactly what we're talking about when we talk about Avastin or Eylea and Lucentis. That's the other one. Got a lot of drug names in my head. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, Eric Carter's with CBS Hot Shots, head coach. Right after this. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3 and say good morning to the head coach out at CBS Hot Shots. That's Eric Hart. Good morning, Eric. You're on the air.
Hi. Thanks, Patty. I appreciate the opportunity.
Happy to have you on. I know a little bit about your organization, but tell the listeners.
Well, our organization is involved with teaching squash to people who have a disability. So we don't take people that are able-bodied. We just focus on people with disabilities. And we have 3 programs, maybe even 4 in another way, but I'll explain that later. Our 3 programs are, we have a neurodevelopment squash program, and that's for people with Down syndrome, autism, ADHD, cognitive development delay, disabilities like that. The second program that we operate is a wheelchair squash program, and that's for people that have MS, have amputation, paralysis, stroke, any issues that affect a person's mobility. The third program that we operate is the only one that's operating in the world, which was surprising in a way, but, only because we started it here in Newfoundland. But what that one's about is we teach people who have vision problems how to play squash, and that can range from people who have diabetic retinopathy, glaucoma, cataracts, people who are legally blind, got tunnel vision, or even people who are completely blind. And we've developed processes on how we can teach each one of those how to get on the squash court and, for the most part, have a game of squash, except when it comes to people who are completely blind. We do have a way to teach them how to hit a forehand drive, backhand drive, a volley, but we also put them through a great warm-up, and we'll make sure that they do court sprints with holding someone's hand, so essentially they don't run headfirst into the wall. But we'll make sure when they finish a session with us that they've had good exercise.
Squash is a terrific sport. One of my great friends, Steve Gardner, is a fantastic player. Why squash, Eric, for you and your organization?
Well, squash is on my background, really. I was a player of squash, and I'm also a certified squash coach. I ran the junior program out in CBS for almost 20 years and had one of the best programs in the province. Like one year, we played in 5 provincial tournaments, and there's 4 divisions. You got from your beginning division up to your top division. For that particular year, there were 20 different champions, and of the 20 champions, my program had all 20. And there was another year when Squash Newfoundland ranked the best 25 players, 25 junior players in the province, and 21 of them came from my program. So I had a history with squash, and I was teaching softball to the Special Olympics, and I could realize that these players came to softball. They waited probably 25 minutes to get up to bat because the reason they wanted to come to softball is they wanted to smack that ball.
Sure.
They didn't care about catching or run the bases. They just wanted to get up and smack it.
Yeah, everyone digs the long ball.
Yeah.
And so inside the world of squash, I mean, it's not equipment intensive. So do you supply the rackets and goggles and balls or any shields that people might require?
Yeah, we provide everything. All a person has to bring is a sweat towel, maybe a bottle of water, and their own indoor sneakers. If they come with that, we'll provide them with the racket, the goggles, the ball, instruction from a coach. And I have a coach on each court, and I just go back and forth, and I supervise what's happening. I make sure the drills are being done as I want them to be done, and I make sure that every person is being challenged.
How does your program incorporate the parents or brothers or sisters or whoever of the players?
The brothers and sisters of the players?
Yeah, like, I mean, if I have, for instance, someone who is legally blind and or is wheelchair bound or whatever, and I'm generally with them to support them, whether it be to go shopping or go to the doctor, and maybe to go to your squash court facility. So are there incorporations for the parents or some of their support persons, pardon me?
They're welcome to come, and, if we have room, we would even consider teaching them how to play squash, too, because we can only take 4 people at a time, as 2 per court. And if there's room, let's say I only have 3 participants, if that person wants to play squash so that they can give the other player who is disabled an opportunity to play outside our regular times, they can do that.
Yeah, that's why I asked, because it might not be every game of squash at your facility versus some of the other squash courts that are out there. That's kind of the reason behind that particular question. Is this a year-round offering, Eric?
Is this a year-round?
Yeah.
No, we basically follow close to the school year. We start up in September, and we finish up probably in mid-May.
And, of course, I mean, squash is the chosen sport for hotshots. But when people who maybe think that they can't do this or can't do that, and they can't go bowling or they can't play golf or they can't play squash, it's bigger than the sport itself, isn't it? I mean, you get a sweat going, probably make a few new friends, and it's just that concept that, you know what, I'm not restricted to being able to do nothing. I can do something, including playing squash. So that's where I think, when Don Connolly calls about sports for the blind, and we're talking this morning about some of the various disabilities and the opportunity to play squash, it becomes bigger than the racket and the ball.
It does. I mean, there's a very important social part of our program, and we do focus on mental health, and we make sure that what we do there helps a person, and that players want to come. And in fact, many parents have told me they don't have to encourage their child to get them out the door to come to squash. They said they're waiting, and they're after them to go.
Of course they are.
And I love hearing comments from the parents like that because, it tells me we're doing some things right, and I think we're doing many things right.
It sure sounds like it. And this question kind of has nothing to do with anything, but what ball do you use? Because there's some 6 different squash balls. Do you use the single white top ball?
We have a lot of balls. We have, for our beginning players, we use the blue dot ball.
Okay.
For people in wheelchairs, as long as they can hit okay to get started, we'll move them from the blue dot to the red dot ball. For people in the blind community, we have an assortment. We have the orange foam ball, which looks roughly the size of a small orange. And I went to the CNIB, and down there they had goggles that you could wear that mimicked the eye condition of each sort of, condition like cataracts. If you want to know what it's like to have cataracts, put on these goggles. If you want to know what glaucoma is like, you put on these. And when I put on the goggles for people who were legally blind, which is only a vision of 20 over 200, and I held the orange ball out in front of me, I could see it. I mean, that was my eureka moment. I knew that if I can see the ball with only 20 over 200 vision, there's no reason we can't be teaching people with visual problems how to play squash. You know, we just got to be willing to play with a different ball. And I think almost all the squash players around will give a guy who's legally blind a chance to play, you know, and play with the orange foam ball.
I'm glad I asked about the balls then, because, I mean, it's one thing to choose the ball for the international and the internationally ranked players versus someone's a hacker like me, for instance. So I'm kind of glad I asked that question. How many people are currently enrolled or participate?
Right now, we got 14. We give a 4-week free trial period. We had several others during the year that came, but they wanted to continue on with other things. Like one was into blind hockey and wanted to try to make the provincial team, so that was his focus. Another young woman came out. She was in the blind program too. But before she became completely blind, she wanted to learn how to dance. And God love her. How could you say, no, you got to play squash? No, we just say thank you for coming and giving our sport a try, and wish them all the best in the world.
Very quickly before I have to get to the news, Eric. So you speak of someone who wants to learn how to dance. You had Shani Ganach there last week. How'd that go?
We did, and the boys were awesome. They came out and they just motivated my players like you wouldn't believe. Chris, he was sweating like you wouldn't believe too, because he spent as much time on the court as he could. And while the guys only promised me a couple hours, they went over. And the reason they went over is because we were trying to give all of my players 2 sessions on the court with each a different player from Shani Ganach. So God love them for going over and making sure everyone got at least 2 sessions.
That's fabulous. They're good fellows. Eric, this has been an enjoyable conversation. Would you like to add anything further before we go to the news?
Just one thing quickly is right now I'm working with Tetra, Leonard Lai, who used to be the president of Squash Newfoundland, and he's also a retired engineering professor from MUN. Well, Leonard is trying to develop a new squash ball, and it will be the best squash ball in the world for people with visual problems. Because where we're to now, this ball will make a beeping noise just like a machine that's backing up. And so a player will be able to hear it going through the air and follow the trajectory.
Yeah, like the rattle of a puck when they play blind hockey. So it all makes sense to me. Eric, I've really enjoyed the conversation, sir. Keep up the good work and stay in touch.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Eric. Bye-bye. Here we go. Eric Hart, head coach out of CBS Hot Shots. Let's take a break. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 4. Chesley, you're on the air. Hi, Chesley, on line number 4.
How you doing?
Doing okay. How you doing?
Not bad. I'm calling from Belleville.
Okay.
We got a town manager here, and I figured now you do something with the drains. On the main road, the drains are full with garbage and whatever, and the ranges, the council does them, and the high road does the main road. Like, it's pretty ridiculous, right, living there here, right, seeing all this dirt and that. And town manager, he lives in one of them ranges. Right?
I mean, it's obviously not good. I would imagine it's probably worse this year, isn't it, Chesley, given the fact that the dump hasn't reopened yet. So obviously people are being forced to store their garbage. Some of that might be getting ripped apart by the birds. Some are just getting blown around. Is that part of the problem, do you think?
No, there's a spot down East End, down on Normal Crescent, right? They control it down there,
Okay.
right? Like it's ridiculous, right? The roads, well, the drains, and that are ridiculous. And another thing, that young girl, what's her name? Britney Spears. I don't think them paramedics had a right going into her room.
I'm not sure what we're talking about now. I'm sorry.
Oh no, there was on the radio about Britney Spears. The paramedics went in her room, and they weren't. It was illegal for them to go in there.
In her room where? In her home or in the hospital or?
Hotel.
Oh, in the hotel. I'm not sure about that story, to be honest. I should have a look around and see if I can figure it out.
Right. Well, it's Britney Spears.
Okay.
Right. And you know, I'm back and forth to the hospital down here. I got neurofibrosis. Right. I got tumors on my body. And in '93, they had to send me to Halifax because I got tumors on the back of my head. Now I got to go to hospital on the 9th. I got a tumor on my spine.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Right, but like, you think they would have found all this out 20 years ago?
Yeah, well, I'm not really sure how the process has unfolded for you. I'm sorry to hear that's what's happening to you. And so what's the course of treatment? Where are you?
I'm home now.
No, I know you're home now. So what's going on? What type of treatments are you receiving?
They changed one medication, my seizure pills. I had seizures. They reduced them. They put them up for more. They're higher than what they were. So I got to get used to that.
Well, I hope you're going to recover in full if that's possible, and I sure hope it is. Chesley, hope they get the garbage issue in the ditches and the drains figured out. So by the drains, you just mean like storm drains on the road?
They're ridiculous. There's garbage bags, everything. Up, even they're on the main road. The council, the high roads does that, and the council does the ranges going up and down, right?
Okay.
I watch by the town manager council up by his house, right? I watch as the rats come up out of the drain.
Gross.
Right? Like I don't mind it, right? I got most of my house. I got one, right, that I can feed. He comes over and he takes the bread, or whatever I gives him.
Wouldn't be me. I can tell you that.
It's only a mouse, right? He's not doing nothing wrong, right? He just takes what he wants and he goes on and he comes back. Right? If I'm in the living room, he'll come up on the couch.
You got a pet mouse?
Well, yeah.
I'm not a big fan of the rodents, to be honest.
He's not doing nothing wrong to me.
Okay, fair enough. If you can put up with it, it's your house. Fair enough.
Oh, yes. I don't mind that, right? I got me my house and my parents' house, so I'm back and forth, right? But the mouse is over my house mostly, right? I don't know if he knows where my father lives.
I don't know if he knows or not. Right? Okay, well, as long as
I goes by the name Chesley.
Yeah.
Because that's my birth name.
Right.
Right, but I goes by Kenny on Belle-Isle, right? That's my...
Your nickname?
No, that's my middle name.
Why do people call you Kenny? Just because? Well, do you prefer Chesley or Kenny?
Kenny.
Kenny?
Yeah, Chesley was my father's name.
Okay. Yeah, I'm named after my father, too.
And I didn't get along with him.
Okay, so that's probably why you prefer Kenny.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll call you Kenny. I got some family relations from Belle Isle too. Steve Neri, Peter Neri.
Oh yes. There's a fellow here, veterinary.
Yeah, I know Glenn.
Yeah, veterinary. Right. I see him all the time. Right. If I want to go down the road, all they gotta do is phone him, and he's at your door like that.
Yeah, Glenn's a good fella.
Yeah.
Haven't seen him in a while. I appreciate the time this morning, Kenny. Thanks for the call. Hopefully you get well soon.
Yeah, but I just wish the council will clean out them drains.
Absolutely right.
Roads.
100%. Appreciate the time. Take good care of yourself.
It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. It sounds ridiculous.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Kenny. Take care of yourself.
You too.
All right, bye-bye. And there is an ongoing concern over in Belle Island with the fact that there was some vandalism took place at the dump site. It has not been reopened yet. People have been sitting on their own garbage for an extended amount of time. It should be open by now. It should be open weeks ago. So it's always closed during the winter. But the issue is, if there was some vandalism, has it been repaired? Why does the vandalism keep people from being able to dump their garbage there? Because you know what goes on here. And this is not in the form of an excuse, but eventually they're just going to throw it in the bush. Again, not an excuse, but that's what's going to happen. I would imagine it's already happening. Let's go ahead and take a break. When we come back, plenty of time left for you. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Caller, you're on the air.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi, I'm calling. I have a different opinion, Patty, on the residents of Tent City.
Okay.
First of all, this is the Colonial Building. It's a historical landmark in our province, so they should have known that they would now, eventually not be allowed to stay there. The other opinion I have is I know many residents down there, yes, some do need it. There are several residents of Tent City that have had apartments in this city that have been in a shelter and have lost them. So they have put themselves in that situation, and then they call into your open line show asking for help when you had an apartment, you were in a shelter, and you got kicked out. 1, because you can't keep it clean, or 2, because you beat the apartment up. So this is what's not being known. All you're hearing is we have no place to live, when a lot of these residents had a place to live and lost it.
I'm sure that's the case for some. And sitting in this chair, it's 100% impossible for me to know the life circumstance and the background of everyone down in those tents. Like, I just can't possibly be able to get into their head, understand their history with being a renter or in a shelter or whatever the case may be. But you're right, inevitably, there are going to be people there that have had opportunity in the past to be housed, and through one thing or another, whether it be about rent or whether it be about a mental illness or an addiction or they beat the place up or whatever the case may be, I'm sure that's the circumstance for some. But for me, I just try to talk about it in the broad sense of housing and what works or what could work and what we're doing or what we're not doing. That's my approach to it, because if I try to take it on an individual basis, then we're probably distracted from the real issue about what is homelessness, what does it look like, who is there, how did they get there, and what do we do about it? That's kind of where I focus.
And I absolutely agree, Patty. I've had a person staying with me now for 5 months who's been actively looking for an apartment in this city and cannot find one.
Yep.
And this person is actively looking one. So yes, we are in a housing crisis. But you know what I mean? And there is a housing crisis in our province. But you've got residents that get houses, like I said, and then, unfortunately, they're ruining it for everyone else. What is the landlord to do? You know what I mean? And like I said, there's not enough help with mental health and addictions in this province either. But you can abuse the system and then get online and complain because you have no place to live.
And that could be the case for some of them. I'm not going to deny that. There's a lot to this stuff. So we just have, I think, a flawed approach in the province and the country about housing anyway. We've arrived at this point where I think it's legitimately a crisis, and the issue of people living in tents is happening right across the country. Different municipalities are taking a different approach to how they deal with these encampments. But we're all sort of chasing our tail here when we try to address the housing shortage anyway. I mean, the vacancy rate in this city is woefully low. It's somewhere in and around 3%. Then you factor in how much rent has increased over the last number of years, basically because of supply, then of course we've got ourselves a problem here. There is something that I've talked about in the past, on this show, and you look at best practices elsewhere, which I think is always wise to do. You know, people can say it's creeping socialism or whatever, but if we talk about the financial implications of being homeless, then they're very real. So for the same folks who bemoan this so-called socialism and they're going to be conservative capitalists, well, that number one concern will be about money. So let's try to do it efficiently and save money at the same time. And it's out there. The models are out there. I've talked about Helsinki, Finland, and their concept called housing first. And maybe we'll get into it another time in a bit more detail. But this was always going to come, to your point. There was always going to be a day where they were going to start to close down Tent City behind the Colonial Building. It was inevitable.
Exactly, because like I said, it's a historical site, and plus you have the folk festival going to be in that major park. You're going to have children there swimming in the summer. You know what I mean? So they should have been looking for places way before now, and now it's on top of them, and they've got no place to go. Well, you know what? You should have been actively looking. And yes, there's not much out there, but if you are lucky to get an apartment, my advice is take care of it and keep it clean.
I appreciate the time this morning. Thanks for the call.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Yeah, and at some point we should dig in a little further here, because we have what they call a laddered approach to housing. So you're homeless, then it's a shelter, then it's a transition home, and then possibly down the line it's a permanent home. So what they call housing first in Helsinki is a very different mindset. They go to immediately is permanent housing. The city of Helsinki owns about 70% of the land in the city. They include 60,000 social housing units. They maintain and increase that number yearly, about 6,000 units per year. In the mid-1980s, there were about 20,000 single homeless people in Finland. Now the estimates, and this is stories from 2021, the number now is much more closer to 3,800. So a dramatic decrease. What they found is that if you had permanent housing, was a much better opportunity for you to get back on your own 2 feet. So when you add up the cost of social services, emergency shelters, transition housing, criminal justice, healthcare, and we read a report the other day that it said quite clearly that it costs about double because of an extended stay in a hospital if you were homeless versus someone who was housed. So you can call it socialism all you like. What they have said and what they have found in Helsinki in particular is that given their approach, not a laddered system, but housing first, they save an estimated €15,000 per year per person. Why? Because you have a better chance if you're housed versus if you're homeless. And all those other moving parts, it's hard to deny the accuracy of it. Between social services, emergency shelters, transition housing, and then, of course, criminal justice and healthcare, there's an argument to be made that we're just on the wrong track. Housing used to be a place to lay your head. Now it's GDP contribution. Now it's the biggest piece of equity we'll ever hold. And they're two different things. We'll get into that a little deeper another time. Let's keep rolling here. Let's go to line number 2. Carrie, you're on the air.
Hi, this is Carrie.
Good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. This is first time on, so excuse me if I'm a bit nervous.
You take your time. You're going to be fine.
I'm calling from Radicton. My husband was diagnosed with the macular degenerative eye disease in 2023. He went to the eye specialist in May of 2021. No, 2021, I'm sorry. He went to the eye specialist in May of 2021. They told him that he would need to see a specialist right away. We didn't know what the situation was, so we waited like 3.5 months. We didn't hear anything. Finally, after a couple calls, we found out he slipped through the cracks, and he finally got an appointment with a specialist 3.5 months later in Corner Brook. And there he was diagnosed with the macular degenerative eye disease. He has the dry eye disease in one, and he has the wet in the other. So with the dry one, the way we understand it, you lose your sight yearly, but with the wet one, you're losing it weekly. So the doctor told him that he was very disappointed that he had not seen the specialist up to that point, because now his situation was irreversible. He had gone too long before he saw the specialist, and they couldn't reverse it. They started him on the eye injections right away, the Bayview, and that worked like a miracle. The doctor said that he would have to come to Corner Brook at least once a month for the rest of his life and have those injections to keep his eyesight if it worked for him. And it did. It worked a miracle with the help of the man above. And after 2 years, time for getting injections was extended from 1 month to 4 months. So we were very grateful about that because, he's living in Radicton. That's 5 hours away. So, and he's got to have a driver in it every time he goes. So it's a little bit stressful trying to get 5 hours away for all those injections all the time. But anyway, make the long story short, he went in for his normal injection in 2023 November, and received the injection. But in January, he received a letter from his insurance company that they were no longer covering the Bayview, and he was switched to Eiley. So the doctor automatically did the switch, and it worked fine for him. Then the insurance company came back and said that they were no longer covering Eiley for Ross because he was a retired senior, and he no longer came under that plan, and he had to go on a Avastin. So the Avastin hasn't been working for him. His eyesight has regressed already twice since every injection he's got. His eyesight has regressed. And the doctor is very upset about it. They don't want to give him Avastin, but they're forced to give it to him because the insurance company is saying that he has to do the trial run, which is at least 4 injections before they would even consider putting him back on the Eiley program. So this is why I'm calling in today. Just 2 weeks ago, we were in for his last injection, and it was a very stressful time for us to watch him looking at the board and not able to see the letters, and watching his eyesight regress, and still we can't get that medication back. The doctor have written letters to the insurance company saying he needs this back. The Avastin's not working for him, but the insurance company is saying, oh no, he's definitely got to use 2 more injections no matter what it does to his eyes. That's the way it sounds. So this is why I'm calling in today. When I heard what your program was about this morning, and this is Eye Health Month, well, there you go.
Yeah. So, I suppose, like everything else dealing with insurance, as Dr. Jackman described, Avastin is more cost-effective. And so if we're talking about injections of Eylea or Lucentis costing $1,500 to $2,000, then we hear that you can do this much more aligned with $30. Of course the insurance companies are going to prefer to cover that particular cost, as opposed to the decision to be made by the doctor and the patient as to what actually works, not how much things cost.
I know, the insurance company is actually playing God and doctor with people's lives, and you're talking about a person's eyesight at risk. And not only that, when he went to the doctor back then, he was told that 1 more line of blood, because he's got the hemorrhaging behind his eye, that he would lose his driver's license and all. And here he is now, he's regressing right back to that point. How do we know after a couple more months, when he gets 2 more injections of this Avastin, that if it's not working for him, how do we know that they're going to cover this drug again, the Eiley, he's going to get under that program again? We have no idea. And he could go back worse than he was in the beginning. And if they do decide to cover it, how do we know that it's going to work the same the second time around? It's a big gamble to take with a person's eyesight.
Sure sounds like it.
Right? So, you understand my concern. I want to call in today about this because we were so stressed. But for Dr. The eye specialist that I had talked to in there, and she tried to console me. This is devastating. So I called Canada Life and filed a complaint because, this is, you just can't do this. You just can't be playing God with people's lives and their eyesight because you decide that one needle is $100 and the other one's $2,000.
Yeah, I agree. And there's limited reason to believe that Avastin's going to work in the future if it hasn't been working at this point.
Right, exactly. So the doctor is very upset about it. I've been on the phone with the doctor's nurse, his assistant that helps him out, and they're all saying the same thing. She said they're devastated that he's seeing the regression in Ross's eyesight because he can't get the proper medication. So, where do we go from here? What do we do? This is the system that we got. He slipped through the cracks in the beginning, and it couldn't be reversed because he waited that long to hear from the specialist and didn't hear anything. Finally, he got a call after I made 2 or 3 calls and said, what happened here? He's supposed to be in seeing a specialist. But apparently he got slipped through the cracks.
Yeah.
He was in a very serious state, his eyesight, when he saw the specialist in 2021 in August. Very serious. The specialist, Dr. Newt, has been awesome to him, but he actually didn't think it would work for him. He was in such a mess. So now it did, and now we're brought to this stage today. What do we do? Here it is. He's got to take 2 more injections and keep watching his eyesight regressing until he has 2 more injections before the doctor can even go back to the drug plan, or and say, okay, this is definitely not working. You got to do something here.
I understand your concern, and it's a double whammy. When it fell through the cracks initially, and now with this particular drug concern that you're talking about, I wish it was different for you, Carrie. I appreciate your time this morning. Say hello to your husband. Anything else you'd like to add this morning?
No, that's it. It's just my concern of this. I don't think it should be happening, because his letter that came out, I mean, he was on the old drug plan. He was on the plan 2 years ago, but the letter came out that the policy had changed for the government drug plan as of January 1st. So, it was addressed to retired seniors, and to me, that's discrimination.
I understand where you're coming from, Carrie. It's a sad state of affairs. I need to get to the break, but I wish you well, and thanks for making time for the show.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Boys, oh boys, it's all bad enough to fall through the cracks to begin with, and their eyesight worsens. Just say something to me, Greg? Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about some issues going on at the Corduroy Brook Nature Centre. Then we're going to talk about the ECMAs coming back to the city of St. John's. When is that, Greg? Next year or 25? Next year? Next year? Okay, we'll talk about that right after this. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 7 and say good morning to the mayor of the city of St. John's. That's Danny Breen. Mayor Breen, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you?
Very well, thank you. How about you?
Doing very well, thanks.
So I understand you're on PEI. Why?
Well, we've come up to the East Coast Music Awards. So what happens is each year when the East Coast Music Awards are in another city, in this case Charlottetown, we're the next host. So we do a ceremonial pass off and some promotion here around attracting people to St. John's for the 2025 ECMAs.
And, of course, we were supposed to host a number of years ago. COVID got in the way, so 5 years after the cancellation, they're coming back. One question people will have is, when the city gets involved in trying to bring, whether it's the Grand Slam of Curling or the Briar or this event to town, it costs some money. And I don't know the number, somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000 this year. Or, no, government is spending $300,000, city adding $200,000. People will ask about the merits of that type of spend. How do you defend that spend?
Well, first of all, there's a significant amount of economic benefit that comes from it. If you look at what's going on here and will happen in St. John's, there's money being spent on different venues. For example, the main show last night, but there's also a number of showcases that continue for the week. So it's not just one show; it's a full week. The other part of it is the exposure for our artists. So you may have some artists who are starting out, and you'll have record companies here, promoters, producers who are going to be seeing that talent and being able to identify their future. So there's a lot of benefits to it. And when you just hear last night, if you look at the talent that was on stage, Davenant Doyle was the co-host, Mark Manning and Rum Raggett were playing, Tim Baker, and also behind the scenes, Paddy, you look at people like Tony Murray and Danny Thomas. They run that show, so we are very, very high in the quality, and both on the stage and behind the stage, and that's good for our economy, and it's good for the future of arts in the province.
And of course, Tony, well-recognized industry professionals, used to run all the operations at the Rock House, still at the Ship, and he's produced many of those shows, Music NL, ECMAs, and otherwise. And Danny Thomas, former member of the Thomas Trio. So there you go, just for context with the crowd.
Yeah.
Anything else on the ECMA front? Because I have a couple of questions for you.
Yeah, no, just that, we're excited to host it next year. We have some new venues. I expect that the Jack Hotel venue will be open next year. The Majestic Theater was recently redeveloped, Mile 1 Convention Center, and a lot of different bars and other facilities in town. So it's going to be a great week and a great benefit to the city.
Yeah, and I mean, I see the merit in these types of events coming because it's not just a one-off impact. And the exposure for the artists, of course, is a long-term, potentially hopeful, positive impact. A couple of quick things here. So when we talk about spending money to attract events, that would also include the 2025 Canada Games. Now, there has been some concerns about possibly being ready on time, not just for the Games proper, but for even for our local athletes to get a chance to train in the surroundings which they'll be competing in. Are we going to be ready?
Well, the information that I have, and it's something that I follow very closely, understandably, is that we're on track. And, there's a tremendous amount of work being done up at the Fortis Canada Games Complex on Westland Road. The provinces and the university are working hard to get the Aqua Arena up to where it needs to be. And we're going to be doing more work this summer. Pretty soon, Greenbelt Tennis Court, the bubble will be replaced on that. And there's a refurbishment of that facility that's going to be starting very shortly. Plus other work around different ballparks. St. Pat's Ballpark is getting a bit of work done. So there's a lot of work to do. But I'm confident that we'll be ready for 2025.
Yeah, and the facelift for those existing facilities is one thing. The new facility that's going to be built where the track once was over on the Aqua Arena facility or parking lot is going to be, I think, a welcomed re-addition to the sports landscape here. Sticking with sports sort of for a second. We know now in the most recent budget here, as a resident of the city of St. John's and a taxpayer, my bill's going up some 13%. People will focus in on the obvious, vehicle replacement, whether it be for garbage pickup or snow management or otherwise. People focusing on the same stuff year over year. $7 million an annual subsidy for St. John's Sports and Entertainment. It's long been bandied about that, maybe the Mary Brown Centre might be something we can offload. Given the fact we just lost one of the anchor tenants, unknown what the future holds for the Rogues. And you say that, it wasn't sold to Neil McDonald because there was no proposals formally put forward. We didn't go to the market to see if anyone was interested. Is it time to float that out there to see what might be involved? Because that subsidy, even though we're talking about $300 million plus budget, that $7 million gets a lot of attention, and the future is uncertain.
Yeah, so what I'd say to that, Paddy, right now is that the management team there under Brent Mead are working hard to adjust to the new reality, I think, in concerts and the way that tours work now. And you're seeing increased activity at the Mary Brown Centre in that turn. In terms of selling it, not only have we never had an offer, I don't know of anybody that's really come to us and said, we want to buy that building, and here's a proposal of how that would look. That hasn't happened. Vast majority of these buildings, except for the much larger ones that are host to NHL teams and the like, are owned by the community and owned by the municipality and run that way. So I noticed in Cape Breton they're putting a $50 million upgrade to the centre in Cape Breton. So there's a lot of investments being made in these because they are significant economic generators. We want to have more activity there, and that's what the management team there and the board are focused on.
Fair enough. But, let's flip that around a little bit. The city hasn't gone to anybody or to the general marketplace to see who might be interested. But where's the harm in it? Like, for instance, if we can do a 10-year mapping of subsidies versus what it might look like if a private entity came in to co-manage or to take over full operations, is there any downside to having that market temperature taken just to see what might be out there?
Well, first of all, then you have to look at how that would work should you sell it. And we've analyzed that. We've looked at how you would separate, for example, Mile 1 from the convention center, or Mary Brown Centre from the convention centre. You look at what happens is if somebody buys the building and in 5-10 years' time says, I don't want to do this anymore, and closes it up, and you end up with a building there that has probably not been upgraded and is just left empty there in the downtown core. So there's a lot of pieces to this. Right now, I think that the Mary Brown Centre is a valuable piece of economic infrastructure that's good for the businesses in the city and good for the city and attracts events. And we need to be focused on how we're going to improve the activity there in the long term.
Yeah, and I suppose you could deal with some of those contractually, for preventative maintenance, revertive ownership to the city if and when the proponent walks away, those types of things.
But then, Petty, then you have to enforce the contract, and that's where it all gets sticky. So right now we're focused on having a significant piece of our infrastructure, which is the Mary Brown Centre and the Convention Centre, operating at a higher level.
Yeah, there's always been sticky relations between tenants and St. John's Sports and Entertainment, whether it be convention organisers and or hockey team or basketball owners, whatever the case may be. Last one very quickly, because I know you've got to go. Yeah. So just a few days after, there was the back and forth, and now you're in court once again with Danny Williams regarding traffic calming, whether it be a signal light and or a roundabout, which would make 6.5 kilometre radius out in Dannyland, or Galway, pardon me. Mm-hmm. So then it was the levy of a fine regarding graffiti. Steve Marshall, local attorney, of course, says this is a clear and obvious vendetta between the city and Danny Williams. You've said it's not true. Help dispel that, because this has been a long-running feud. This is not just about one roundabout, not about one piece of graffiti. This has been on several quarters over several years. So when Steve Marshall calls it a vendetta, what do you call it?
Well, that's just foolishness. That's what I call it, because we went out with our staff earlier this year, and we did a sweep of the downtown, Water Street, and we issued a number of notices. We followed up on the notices, and I think we were able to deal with the graffiti on buildings in all situations, but I think it was 2 out of 30, and those are still continue to be ongoing. So then what we said to our staff is, look, that seemed to work very well there. Let's move that down and go down to Duckworth Street and other areas. And that's where this came from. So there's no vendetta. I don't go out and tell inspectors to go down and check on a certain building because somebody is upset at me. Our staff are out there doing the work. The people want graffiti cleaned up, and we told them that we'd put some focus on it, and we did.
Appreciate the time. Thanks, February.
Thanks, Paddy.
Take care. Bye-bye. All right, and the graffiti issue, I think there was some 11 summons handed out for graffiti and fines levied. There was another 11, I believe, a similar number where the graffiti was actually cleaned up. Let's take a break. When we come back, Tiffany Lane, you're next. Program and event coordinator of Codroy. Is it Codroy? The Codroy Valley. You got it written down as Corduroy. That's the pants we wore past down to Corduroy. The Corduroy Brook Nature Centre. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 1 and say good morning to the program and event coordinator with the Corduroy Brook Nature Centre. That's Tiffany Lane. Good morning, Tiffany. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you on. Are you folks located in Grand Falls, Windsor?
We are.
Okay. What's happened?
So on Wednesday, we had a break-in of our workshop over on Main Street. It's located in a separate area from our nature center. So a lot of our tools have been stolen. Majority of what was stolen, is everything that our maintenance crew uses to maintain our trail or to carry out projects here at Corduroy Brook. And the amount that was stolen was about $3,000 to $4,000 worth of equipment. So this has made like a major impact on our organization, especially, with current projects we have coming up. We've had some things planned, especially now with our tourist season coming up. We'll normally be getting our center ready, and we've had plans to do some more exhibits in our nature center to help with our, efforts in educating children and tours and things like that here. So that has definitely impacted that very much. And we, as a nonprofit charity, we rely heavily on government grants and funding from private foundations. And we also get funding from, some income from the River Gold Lottery, which we've been fortunate to have. And that's been able to give us the support to have positions like our environmental technician who started a few years ago. And with her here, and now our current environmental technician, we have been able to enhance the habitats here at Corduroy Brook, enhance the wetlands, and, more education towards preserving the environment. So those positions have been really vital to Corduroy Brook, and because of River Gold, we've been able to do that, as well as some student leader positions that we have over the summer. and to support, our nature camp and all the things that we do here in the summer as well. But we still struggle to find financial stability, and all of the equipment and tools that we have had has been solely purchased and acquired by Corduroy Brook, and all the maintenance and work that we do here is off the backs of all of our team here. And we all do have our specific titles here, but we're very much a team, and we very much do everything here, and we all put our hands into whatever it needs to get done. And this has definitely broken the hearts of our team, and we are all we're very determined to move forward. And we take pride in what we do here at Corduroy Brook and providing healthy living and connections with nature for our community, and offering free events through, like we do a Family Fun Day event every year in February, where everyone can come out and get together, and it's a great community event. We also do a Halloween event for children in October, and they come out, and we do free loop bags, and it's just a great time. And we love to see our community come here and use our trail and take in the nature and for their own health. And it's a beautiful place to be, and we take pride in taking care of this trail and all the habitats and the wildlife here. And it's very unfortunate that we've been set back, but we are determined to go forward. And we just wanted to come on here and let people know who we are and what we do here, and our support, their support, and what we'd like to tell people about the break-in. And hopefully there will be people that can help support us in the future moving forward.
Let's hope so. Anything specific that got derailed with this theft? It's all bad enough that you lost anything, regardless of the total cash amount or cash value. Did anything specifically that was on tap for this year get jeopardized because of this?
Well, yes, actually. We've over the past couple of months, we've had a plan to make some changes to our interpretation center. So we were planning to create some new exhibits inside the center, some fun things for kids. We were changing the layout. We were going to have some new tables with some different types of exhibits that were going to be made, and a live toad exhibit. We were going to do a taxidermy exhibit, and the inside of the interpretation center was going to be much different than what it was in the past. And it's something that we were all very passionate about, and we had lots of ideas, and we've been planning it for the last couple of months. And we were actually going to start work on the displays next week, but now without the tools and the proper equipment to do that, that has been derailed, and we are not sure if that will even go ahead at this time.
I'm sorry to hear that this happened. So what's your plea to the listeners this morning? To be on the lookout for something, or for donations to flow in? What would you like the result of this call to be? Well,
if there are people or organizations that would love to offer support or donations of tools that they can do, we would greatly appreciate that, and that would definitely help us. Also, yes, to be on the lookout for who is responsible and bring them to justice, and maybe hopefully return our tools to us so that we can continue what we've been doing here. Our goal for the future, and it has been for quite some time, is to have our workshop located closer to our nature center, where we can have more surveillance and things like that on it. We did have break-ins in the past and vandalism over the last 7 years that I've been here, and it's unfortunate that we've been the target of that sometimes. But, after our last break-in, we did reinforce the locks, and we did, take extra measures and put a camera over there, and we've given that data to the RCMP. But unfortunately, it didn't stop them this time. And then we're just going to push forward and hopefully come up with another way that we can keep our things safe and continue to do the community work that we are doing.
Fingers crossed you recover what was stolen. People are willing to rob from anybody, including not-for-profits doing some important work in the community. It's just amazing to me, although I shouldn't be amazed anymore. Tiffany, thanks for making time for us this morning. Have a great season, and hopefully something positive comes of this call.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take care.
You too.
That's Tiffany Lane, Program and Event Coordinator at the Corduroy Brook Nature Trail. Yeah. And, of course, Nature Centre. All right, let's check in on the Twitter. Pat, you stay right there. We don't want to jeopardize your time and get into the news on time like I always do. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Up Online. You know what to do. Follow us there. You want to offer suggestions about what you hear on the show, what you'd like to hear on the show, comment on the conversations we've had or conversations we should be having, you can do it there. Email address is openon@vocm.com. When we come back, Pat's in the queue. He wants to talk about the fallout from the Grace Nurses Residence teardown. What that might be, we'll find out Pat's concern after this. Plus, there was conversation that maybe that would be the optimum site for the replacement for St. Clair's whenever that happens. And we're told the footprint is too small. So the question there would be, they're trying to compare what you need for St. Clair's versus what was required for the Western Memorial Regional Hospital. Maybe the concept of building up higher as opposed to building out sprawl-wise. Anyway, we'll hear from Pat right after this. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line 3. Pat, you're on the air.
How you doing? You hear me pretty good there?
I can hear you pretty good.
I can't help but make a comment on that last news item about the most vulnerable people in our society being attacked. And it comes to talk about oppressive regimes from years ago. And I'm not going to explain exactly what I'm talking about, but everybody knows that. Anyway, I'm dealing with the same branch of government, Works and Services and Transportation, John Abbott's office.
Mm-hmm.
On March the 1st, the minister was here on the Grace Hospital site with his white hat on in a big excavator going to start the demolition, right? The big photo op. On March the 2nd, they started. They started just afternoon, but big excavators with jackhammers on them, reaching up to the top and pounding on the building. Now, in the meantime, I never took no notice of that, and I was glad that it was getting tore down, right? Because it would get rid of the needles and everything else that was around this neighborhood that attracted people to that. Okay, and the CBC did a section on the news about them, the remediation inside and everything else looked pretty professional, and no doubt it was. But on March the 2nd, they started in with jackhammers around 12 o'clock. Sunday was a drizzly old day, sort of like today, wet and a bit of snow in the air. And I went out to go somewhere about 2 o'clock. And I started up my vehicle, and it was full of mud and rock and crap. And I said, and I went on where I was going. When I came back, I was thinking about it. So then I started up another vehicle in my driveway, which had been there since Friday evening, and I made a video of it, sweeping back and forth the windshield, and then I shut the windshield off. I came in the house and got a scraper and an empty pill bottle and went out, and I took the samples from either side of my windshield and put it in the bottle. So the next day I called Works and Services, got in contact with an engineer who was heading up the Works and Services end of it there. He came to my house and we talked about it. I showed him the samples and I said, "Do you want to have it tested?" He said, "No." He said, "I don't think that came from the building," right? And to this time, I don't know if it came from the building, but hey, it's the only industrial site that was happening in this neighborhood at the time. Anyway, so I contacted OH&S because they were supposed to be there all the time, and they said, no, it didn't come from that site. So I took the sample, and I found a company here in St. John's who had their lab in Nova Scotia, and I sent it out to them. All right, and and within a couple of days, I had it back because it was sent by courier, and then the results came in an email, and then it came in the mail, certainly. So I contacted the contact. I got a contact here of the contractor, and he was explaining what I talked about there earlier about the remediation of that. Well, I said I can't get no help because Works and Services didn't want to help me, and the Minister of Health didn't want to help. I tried to contact them because it was a health issue. Anyway, he threatened me with lawyers, so I'm not going to really mention Grace Hospital, but because of that, right? So the health minister, Tom Osborne, didn't get back to me. One of his executive assistants contacted me, a nice man, and I got my test result back, and the limit in Newfoundland is 1% for Newfoundland, 1%. What I got back was between 1 and 5% amosite, fictitious fibers, friable fibers, which are really easily airborne. So it's 5 times more than the limit that's allowed. Okay? Now, no one did testing outside the site. You got a big fence wall there, a black wall, and no one did testing. Every car in this neighborhood that Sunday morning had that crap on it. And Works and Services are trying to discredit this analysis from an accredited lab in Nova Scotia, Pinchin they're called, and it didn't happen until they started beating down the exterior walls outside. And I did some information, did some checking, and there was this material called vermiculite. And it was insulation that was stuffed in cinder blocks years ago to form insulation. And now, was that it? I don't know. But Pat, fibers, asbestos don't appear out of nowhere on your neighborhood and all the cars. And when I say neighborhood, I'm talking part of Pleasant Street, the Bradbury Place where I'm at, Power Street, Monks Lane, Lemarchin Road, Bennett Avenue. Over Bennett Avenue, there's a seniors rec center there.
Yep.
And them fellas were in and out of that all the time, and ladies. And then down on Hamilton Avenue. So the wind didn't blow towards me every day, but it was blowing somewhere here in Newfoundland. And now everybody is denying this. I couldn't get one person to help me. I contacted City Hall and just listened to Danny Breen there. He wasn't so fast to get back to me and the neighbors of this neighborhood here. He never contacted us. They didn't know him.
Okay, just hold on a second. So if it was acknowledged that it absolutely is from that site, then what? What are you asking for?
Well, you know, what about our health there? How is that going to affect our health? We're bringing that in our home on our boats. There's children right here that play in the grass.
No, I understand the implications. I'm just wondering, are you talking about a better approach to containment or neighborhood cleanups? I'm just wondering what you think should be done if they acknowledge that it did indeed come from that site.
Well, I need someone professionally to come and tell me that, Pat, you know, you and your family and the families there don't have anything to worry about. Or if there is a health issue, then what are we going to do about it? I don't know.
Okay.
I've never been covered with asbestos before, figuratively speaking, you know?
Well, it's obviously a problem. Asbestos is a well understood carcinogen for starters. It's the problem that we have with trying to sell government buildings that are of a certain age because of the abatement that's required and the remediation. I mean, and unfortunately, we still are exporting some asbestos from Quebec, if I remember correctly, which is ridiculous to say the very least. Anything else you want to add to it this morning, Pat? Because we'll do some follow-up with the department.
Yeah, you know, that's it. You know, like, no one seems to be on my side. It seems like that I did something wrong by taking the sample and sending it off to Nova Scotia to be tested. That's my life. I'm always testing samples, and when I drill a hole at work, if it's an old concrete or there's any gyprock involved, you just don't drill a hole. You got to be suited up, and that got to be contained, And here they are with gigantic jackhammers, and it all come over. And you could go up on Lamarche Road, you could see the stream coming through the air. And that young engineer said, "No, that didn't. The wind can't do that." Well, I'd like to have him in a hurricane down in Louisiana somewhere, like I've been through. And wind, I tell you that, wind can carry more than a few old pecks of dust.
Oh, of course it can. That's sort of a silly comeback.
I sent the video to the each agent, Works and Services, the engineer, OHS, okay? I sent the video, and I sent the results of my test. And nowhere on my application for a test did I say the Grace Hospital property. So I'm putting that out there, too, in case you want to try to come here and do me. I'm very disappointed in the health minister. He didn't contact me. He had I thought of him as a friend, and there was a time when he was a PC. He was my buddy, but I guess he had a different agenda then. Anyway, thanks for letting me get that out. And just with all those streets that I mentioned, you don't realize it, but that came on you too. Not only on me.
Well, I'll follow up with the ministers responsible, and I imagine the newsroom might do the same. I appreciate the time, Pat. Thanks for putting this out there.
Okay, Patty, thank you.
You're welcome. Take care. All right, bye-bye. Obviously, there's going to be a fallout from those types of demolitions. I'd imagine there's also an increase in some rodent activity because you know full well that nurse's resident was absolutely full. And it was absolutely a place for vagrants. And, even if it's just kids in there beating the place up or looking around, whatever the case would be, it's long overdue for that to come down. Let's take a break. When we come back, Woody French in the queue to talk about a ceremony out in his neck of the woods. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. Good morning, Woody French. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you today?
Not too bad at all. How about yourself?
Oh, pretty good. Can't complain at all. Patty, we've got an event coming up in Conception Bay South, and normally in Conception Bay South, sometimes we do things a little bit differently. But this year, because of the issues going around the repatriation of the unknown soldier and the work that's being done at the Monument of Honor, or the National Memorial in St. John's, HMCS Cabot is coming out to Conception Bay South to our Monument of Honor, and we're going to have a ceremony on Sunday commemorating the Battle of the Atlantic, the Battle of Vimy Ridge, the Battle of Normandy D-Day, and some fallen paratroopers. Patty, we remember them every year. These are paratroopers that were on a training exercise in Ontario and got blown off course, and unfortunately 7 of them came into the Ottawa River and were drowned. So we respect them. And also, one of the things near and dear to Conception Bay South is the crash of Tusker Flight 27, which was a helicopter crash when a unit was returning from a rescue operation that they were on, and unfortunately it crashed. And one of the crew members on board that helicopter was Daryl Cronin, and he was a resident of Kelligrew, so that's near and dear to our hearts. So HMCS Cabot are coming to parade out here on Sunday, as well as members of the Royal Newfoundland Regiment and paratrooper representatives, some of them that knew some of these guys. And, of course, we're having a contingent from the Air Force, and they're going to be out to help us remember those comrades, those fallen comrades. And, of course, the Battle of the Atlantic is significant to me as well. Patty, my father, served on a vessel during the Second World War, and it was only lately that we found out that he was entitled to medals for his service, and 2 of those medals had to do with the Battle of the Atlantic. So for me, there's a personal interest as well. But as Newfoundlanders, we all had somebody or know of somebody that's been involved with the military, and we certainly encourage the public in Conception Bay South or anywhere that has a connection to this type of service, come out and join us on Sunday at 10:30 a.m. to help us pay respects to those fallen comrades.
Well, the Battle of the Atlantic was pretty much the entirety of the Second World War. I mean, first shots were fired sometime in September of 1939. It continued right till 1945. I think it began with the sinking or the torpedoing and sinking of the Athenia. There was a handful of Canadians on board there. About a week or 10 days later, Canada declared war on Germany, and we were involved for the entirety of the Second World War at sea. And then, of course, you bring in the issue of the Caribou. I can't remember how many people were on board the Caribou, somewhere like 130, 140. So that's a very local connection to the Battle of the Atlantic. But it was devastating insofar as loss of life. Both sides lost in excess of 70,000, I believe on the Allied side, 75,000 people. And many of them, of course, were part of the armed forces, but some of them weren't. So the Battle of the Atlantic, some people think of these things as being one specific battle fought over the course of weeks or months, but this one was fought over the course of 6 years.
And we were such a vital lifeline that, everybody that lived on this island had an involvement during the Second World War, even if it was just using your blackout curtains at night and so on and so forth.
Yep.
And, of course, the issue in Conception Bay with the vessels loading at Belle Island was certainly close to us, as was the Caribou. And I think that, being connected to the sea like we are and have been for our existence, it's, the fact that people serve, and like you said, especially from the merchant mariners who weren't recognized until later after the war was long over, and again, my father being one of them, a lot of families that thought that they weren't connected to the Second World War because their families weren't serving on military ships, they also died and were recognized as a result of that terrible conflict. And like you said, it's we're sitting here today enjoying what we got and the freedom to be able to get on open lines and all that kind of thing. But you got to remember that men and women paid the supreme sacrifice for us to be able to do that, and any opportunity that we get to remember them is certainly a good opportunity, and one that we should really attend. And this year, with the return of the remains of the unknown soldier, it's going to have a profound impact on Newfoundland and their descendants. It's going to be a heck of a year every year in Newfoundland for tourism. But this year, because of what's going on, it's going to be an even more memorable year because of that.
Yeah, and of course, I guess we should include the Air Force in the Battle of the Atlantic. They're accredited with sinking a load of German submarines. And when Canada entered the war, the Navy was extremely small. I don't know what the numbers were, but we were only a handful of destroyers. Then that massive effort to build all those corvettes, many of which were built so quickly that they weren't really that type of top-quality vessel. And then you think about the merchant marines, the merchant vessels. I mean, my grandfather was on a merchant vessel in the First World War. They're basically, especially when they were taking ammunition across the ocean, basically sitting on a bomb with little to no defense. Remarkable stuff. It must have been absolutely terrifying. Of course, every involvement in the theater of war would be terrifying, but sitting on a bomb, knowing that the enemy was unseen, it was under the water, and very little defense for most of the passage across, is extraordinary stories coming from. Anything else? Give us the details, the more time, the where, the whens for the ceremony, Woody.
Okay, the ceremony is going to be at the Monument of Honor in Conception Bay South, starting at 10:30 a.m. And Patty, speaking about the ships, there's going to be a tolling of the bell by HMCS Cabot personnel for 26 lost ships, and you can imagine the number of lives that were connected to that. So, just here in our little corner of the world, we've got a minimum of 26, and I would imagine that they're military vessels, and of course, as you said, the number of merchant mariners and their ships that went down is phenomenal as well. So, it's a good day to come out, visit with the veterans. And Paddy, one of the things that you mentioned, again, near and dear to my heart, this is the 100th anniversary of the Royal Canadian Air Force.
Yep.
And I had the honor of serving in that outfit for 10 years, and it's another celebration that's going on this year as well. So come out and meet us, say hello to us, and everybody's welcome to come to the Legion afterwards for a cup of coffee or a bowl of soup. And it's a good chance to recognize the veterans, and we certainly appreciate the support of the general public. And so come out and see us. We'd love to see you. And it's going to be hopefully a good day. Forecast looks like it's going to be pretty good, so we certainly look forward to that.
Absolutely, and of course, there are stories of German U-boats in and out of St. John's Harbour. I don't know how accurate some of those stories are, but we know a German torpedo struck Lance Cove on Bell Island, so there's a lot of direct connection here with this particular province. And those stories are haunting about the U-boat wolf packs, traveling in packs of 6 and 7, and the damage they were able to do in short order. Amazing stuff when you think about it.
As a matter of fact, there's a periscope of one down in the Crow's Nest.
That's right. Absolutely. Forgot about that.
Yeah.
Woody, it's always good to have you on the show. Hope you're doing well.
Thanks so much, Paddy. Really, really appreciate the opportunity, and certainly thank you and VOCM and your listeners for supporting our veterans, and thank you ever so much for that.
Anytime, Woody. Stay in touch.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Yeah, the Battle of Atlantic, it's not a one-off. It was the entirety of the war at sea. September 39, all the way to 45. Will I take a break on time, Greg, or get to Danya? Okay, when we come back, interesting call coming. So back in 1976-ish, Family Feud began a run. It was a limited run at the beginning, but then it was reborn, and it became an extraordinarily popular game show. If memory serves, Canadians weren't able to get on things like Family Feud and Jeopardy until they expanded their horizons and expanded their audience reach. And now, of course, there's such a beast called Family Feud Canada. We've had some families from this province do quite an entertaining performance on Family Feud Canada. They're back out in the general public doing some casting calls to see what other families from the country, and particularly in this province, might be interested in strutting their stuff on the small screen on Family Feud. Danya Ali is the supervising casting producer for Family Feud Canada. She's coming up after the break. And Tony wants to talk about the by-election results out in the town of Paradise. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 5 and say good morning to the supervising casting producer for Family Feud Canada. That's Danya Ali. Good morning, Danya. You're on the air.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I imagine this call is about a casting call here in the province, I suppose?
Absolutely. Yeah. Family Feud Canada is back. We're gearing up for season 6, and we are looking for families from across the country. But we particularly have had such great experiences with outstanding families from Newfoundland and especially St. John's. I mean, we had the Parsons family last year that won $20,000.
Mm-hmm.
So we found that some of our most memorable families actually indeed come out from Newfoundland. So here to spread the word, and if anyone's hearing this right now, now's the time to apply.
I wonder why our families have been so entertaining. So what does the casting call look like here? As opposed to auditioning for a part where I'd go and read in front of producers and directors, what does the casting call look like for this program?
Yeah, so our casting process is a bit different. We are fully virtual, so the application is very short, and after they submit it, one of the producers will reach out to set up a virtual audition, which means that not all 5 family members have to live under the same roof. They can actually, be in different provinces or territories. They'll be joining the call remotely with the producer, hop on about an hour audition call where we learn all about them, and they'll play a mock game of the feud as well. And it's as simple as that.
What are you looking for in particular? Is it all about the entertainment value, or is there any other specifics that make a family stand out?
Yeah, we're actually looking for families who just have the ability to be their authentic selves. Loud and fun and silly families are great too, but we also are very much interested in the charming, endearing families as well. We want to be able to paint a a picture of what it means to be Canadian, and that means a variety of different types of families.
Does it end up being a province pitted against another province?
Not necessarily. Okay. Sometimes there are, fun, friendly competitions, if you will. But that's kind of not the intent for us. We're just in the interest of putting, as many Canadians on TV as possible.
It can be a really fun show. I mean, many people, or most listeners to this program, have probably watched some Family Feud over the years, whether it be with some pretty famous people that have hosted the program when we talk about Family Feud in general. I mean, Richard Dawson, of course, the irrepressible Richard Dawson. Louis Anderson hosted for a while. Steve Harvey brought the ratings back significantly when he hosted. And not only the families are important, but the host is intricately important. And you got a good one. Jerry D is really good at it.
Absolutely. Jerry D has a lot of fun on the show with the families. He is so excited every season to meet families all across Canada. It's the show. He does have a lot of fun with the families from Newfoundland as well.
Terrific. Does everybody participating have to be a certain age or older?
Yes. So anyone over the age of 18 is welcome to be on the show.
So, families listening here that this is something they'd like to entertain, what do they need to do? What are the next steps?
Next steps, head on over to cbc.ca/familyfeud auditions, upload a photo, a short video, and answer a few short questions telling us about your family. And right after that, within a week, you should receive an email from my team scheduling your virtual audition.
And as the eventual successful families, the taping's in Toronto, I would imagine, is it?
Correct. Yes, we do tape downtown Toronto at the CBC headquarters. And what's great about the show is we actually do cover the cost of travel and accommodations for families living outside of the province. So anyone from Newfoundland who applies and makes it to the next step will actually be getting a free trip to Toronto as well and a stay.
Hard to beat. It's a fun show. Hopefully some families will be interested after this telephone call this morning, Danya. Anything else you'd like to tell us while we have you?
I wanted to let families know that, this is a very accessible format. Some people feel like it's really hard to get on TV, but a show like Family Feud Canada that embraces just, real authentic people, I bet that your chances are a lot higher than you think. So just go ahead and apply.
Great to have you on the show. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. As Tanya Ali, supervising casting producer for Family Feud Canada. All right, let's keep going. Line number 1. Tony, you're on the air. Tony
Hello?
On 1. Yes, sir, you're on the air.
Oh, thanks, Paddy. Thanks for taking my call, and good morning to you.
Good morning to you as well.
Yes, I was calling just to talk about the recent Paradise Councillor by-election.
Sure.
It was on April 30th, and first of all, I'd like to thank my supporters that went out and voted for me, and also all the voters that went out and voted for the election.
Oh, so you're Tony Kelly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I was unsuccessful in my bid, but I want to congratulate the elected candidate and the other candidates that ran as well. It was a good exercise in democracy that way for the amount. But even though the turnout was low, actually it was abysmally low, considering even though it was a by-election. And there could be many reasons for that, like it's people always say, well, it was a by-election, but the weather didn't cooperate much either. We had this blowing rain at us all day pretty well, right? I was noticing as I was coming home myself, about 5-ish, I said, now I see people going in their houses with their bags of groceries. I said, they're not going to go out in that today, right?
Could be. I mean, I don't know what the exact tally was, but somewhere around 1,300 votes or in that neighborhood were cast.
Yeah,
and eventually,
I think it was 1,360.
Okay.
And it was a spread there, but it was interesting on the doorsteps. I found there was many issues, but it just didn't reflect at the polls. A lot of people were talking about things, all the issues such as the snow clearing or the street repairs or sidewalks, seniors transportation, youth issues like needing extra spaces in recreation or probably a swimming pool and daycare, and some of those issues are not municipal, but I know and a lot of people will agree that municipalities can certainly lobby and advocate and probably help accommodate some of those issues, you know.
Right, and the eventual winner was Tommy Marr, who we've had on this program during the campaign. And, you know, voter apathy is unfortunately very, very real, municipally, provincially, and federally. And regardless of the by-election issue, is we've just got to do a better job, people understanding that it's not your civic duty, but it might be one of your responsibilities. And I don't know why so many people are loath to vote, but anyway, that's a conversation for another day. Anything else you want to add to it this morning, Tony? Oh,
yeah, I think what it is too, like people are pretty well contented for in a lot of things, and sometimes they think, well, I'm not going to go out and vote today. That'll work out all right or whatever. But then in the long run, the issues that they're dealing with will still be there. Now, time will tell. You know, over the next 16 months or whatever, the next election, life will go on. We'll see what happens. But you know, I really want to thank again to those that did participate and voted, because that's where it's at. And if the majority of people would go out and vote, then we get a result that fully reflects the wishes of the majority in any community, town, municipality, province, or country. And that doesn't happen, and that's why we end up with sometimes it's a popularity contest, not really a credibility one. So that's all I can say to that.
And fair enough, there's a lot to what you just said right there. You know, whoever has the most signs wins, or its popularity or name recognition, those types of things really do carry the day more often than not. Tony, congratulations on you for taking a swing at it.
One thing, Paddy, the other thing is sometimes you get protest votes too, things like that, right? And probably by-elections are the best time for that if people want to corral their support and get it out, you know. And a lot of times that's the way it is. Everybody knows nowadays when elections are on, if you got a team on the ground and you get your vote out, you got a chance of winning the vote. And it's almost like become it's a new sport in a way, right? It's not really. It's all I can say is that I don't tend to side with any particular party for the most part. I always look at the candidates, what they stand for, and what the issues are. And sometimes it's not a matter of who you want to put in, it's probably who you want to put out or who you don't want to put in. And lots of times that's the situation. But like we got a lot of big elections coming up now here in the province in the next little while. So it's going to be interesting to see how many people get out and exercise their franchise and like, you know, because when we get out with our collective power, our democracy can result in our hopes and dreams. But when we don't, we just leave it to someone else to make decisions for us, and that's not the best thing in the democracy, as you can see.
Well, in the world of politics, the get out the vote machine, especially when we're looking at close competitions, that's the be all and end all. It really, truly is. You know, voter registration, constant contact throughout the course of your term, and then on the day of, I guess the week leading up to those crucial 6, 7, 8, 10 days, that's a big, big deal. Tony, I'm off to the break. I appreciate your time, and once again, congratulations.
Can I say one little thing to you?
As long as you can do it quickly.
Okay, well, in my case, I didn't find out about the election because I was going away on the 28th, so I found out on the 24th. I went down, paid my taxes on the Monday, and then I was gone to Ottawa and then down south for a week or so. And so I got nominated while I was away. When I got back, it was the 16th of April. Okay. I only had 10 days then or so to do a campaign. And then I was sick for 5 when I came back from 90 degrees down to 30. So, but, you know, as part of it is, like, I don't blame the weather or the voters or anything like that. Like, it's on me, a lot of it. So I understand that. But I want to thank the people that supported me. And if I only had to get the 778 to win it the last time, I would have taken it. But we'll see what happens in 25. So thanks for your time, Paddy.
Thanks a lot, Tony. All the best.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Final break of the day, final break of the week. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 2 and say good morning to the holder of 726-5975. That's Don Connolly. Good morning, Don. You're on the air.
You cracks me up, Patty. You do. You do. You always remember that number for whatever reason. There you go.
I don't know. It's stuck in my head.
I heard you throwing my name out earlier this morning, but there you go as well. Patty, wanted to talk to you for a few minutes, if I can, about a reminder to people out there that are blind or visually impaired about the adult camp for the blind. It's going to be coming up on August the 11th to the 17th out at the Line Max Sims Camp. And it's a great opportunity, Patty, for blind and visually impaired people, particularly newly diagnosed, I guess, blind or visually impaired people, to meet with other people and talk about options and concerns and issues that bug them being visually impaired. And it's a great opportunity to get together, meet other people. But just to make a point on talking to other people about, how do you get around some stuff when you're blind or visually impaired. Patty, I had cataract surgery last Thursday. I've only got the one eye and worry about getting the cataract surgery on that. But anyway, I did have the cataract surgery. Then, of course, I had to learn how to put drops in. You got to put drops in 3 different drops 4 times a day for 2 weeks, and then 3 times a day for another 1 drop 3 times a day for another 5 days, and so on down the line. I'm going to have to put in a total of 200 drops plus over the next month. And I'm trying to figure out, well, how do I do this? I can get some friends to help me at, 12 o'clock a day and 6 in the evening, but 12 midnight and 6 in the morning are going to be slightly different issues. So I talked to my son. Actually, I talked to a couple of different friends, and then I talked to my son and mentioning the issue and said, I'm nervous because I got to get that eye plunger or the eyedropper close to my eye without touching my eye and get it in there and all that kind of stuff. He said, Dad, why don't you take one of them little paper cups that you'd use if you're taking a pill, like a Dixie cup type thing. They're only about 2 inches high, hold 2 or 3 ounces of water. He said, then cut that in half, put a hole down the middle of it, stick the eyedropper up through that, put it over your eye, and you should be able to maintain your distance without hitting your eye. I said, wow, fantastic idea. Chris, I got to try it. I tried it, and it worked.
Like a little funnel.
It's just like a little funnel, but as a little dropper, but it keeps it away from my eye. And so the eyedropper goes through a little hole, so it drops right into my eye. And I said, wow, and it's just a matter of talking to other people about addressing issues that help you to find a way around the problem when you always can't think about it yourself. I'm reminded of a time back 20 years ago or more. I had a group of blind and visually impaired people I was working with at the time, and my question to them is, what bugs you about being visually impaired? And I remember this one lady, she said, I love cooking and baking. And this lady was totally blind all her life. She loved cooking and baking, but her worst problem was she couldn't present her cookies properly, and she loved entertaining. And she wanted to be able to present her cookies properly, but could never get them straight and an even cut and all that kind of stuff. So we took the idea, and your gentleman earlier this morning talked about going to Tetra with the orange ball idea for his game, his sport.
Squash, yeah.
Squash, thank you. And so we went to Tetra and explained the issue to them, and how can we help this individual to present her cookies better? So they said, well, does she have a square 10 or 12-inch cookie pan that she uses? I said, I don't know, but we'll get back to her. So she had a 12-inch cookie pan. And we said, okay, let's give us the cookie pan for a couple of days, and we'll see what Tetra can do. We gave the cookie pan to Tetra, and Tetra said, okay, here we need to get a cover for this, and we need to cut slots in it, basically. So they cut slots every 2 inches apart. So all of a sudden, now she's got 5 slots cut in this plastic covering that they made just for her cookie pan. You're able to put your knife in, pull down the knife against the cookies, and then when you had the 5 cuts made, you take the cover, you turn it 90 degrees, put the knife down and cut it again, and she had perfectly 2-inch square cookies.
Perfect. Before we run out of time, Don, I'll sneak on one more call. For folks who want to get involved with the Adult Camp for the Blind coming up in August, what do they have to do?
If they can contact a lady by the name of Pat Dwyer, she's the coordinator of the program, and her number is obviously 709-634-0912, or they can phone you and get my phone number, which is 726-5975. If you got any issues, concerns, folks, about being blind or visually impaired, you're not quite sure how to handle it, this is a great opportunity to learn how to deal effectively with your vision impairment and have an awful lot of fun along the way.
Sounds great. Thanks for this, Don.
Thank you so much, Patty.
All the best. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Last word this morning, I almost choked on my saliva. Last word this morning goes to line number 3, the independent member of the House of Assembly, Mount Pearl Southlands. That's Paul Lane. Paul, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you this morning?
Very well. How about you?
I'm doing great, sir. Doing great. Patty, I just wanted to, just have a brief chat, about the budget and our province's finances in general. And I thought the budget was kind of a stay the course thing, and there's no doubt that there's been some improvements in terms of the bond rating agencies and so on, and liquidity and so on, and that's a positive thing. The fact that the projected deficit, has shrunk over the years, the last few years, in terms of the actual budget. I think is $152 million deficit this year. But at the end of the day, I think it's important for us to all realize collectively that there still is a deficit. And at the end of the day as well, we are borrowing almost $3 billion with a B again this year. Now, according to the minister, I think it was $1.2 billion as to some bonds and so on that have come due. So you're kind of borrowing money to pay off money, so to speak. But there's a $1.6 billion in new borrowing for infrastructure.
Net borrowing this year, $1.6 billion. You're right. And look, I think it's still accounting tricks. When we talk about a deficit and don't include borrowing, then we can shift those numbers around as much as we like. So, and then they say, the road to surplus is coming in the next couple of years, what have you. No real firm understanding about how that map looks. But anyway, I guess it all remains to be seen. Before we run out of time, you can give us your summary point, Paul, because we're 2 minutes from noon.
Yeah, no worries. And I guess that is my point, that to some degree there's a bit of smoke and mirrors. And while there may be some positives there, and you can present the budget to say, and I'm not arguing that we're not necessarily doing better, but at the end of the day, there's still going to be another $1.6 billion added to the debt. Some of it's not going to show up necessarily this year because for capital and doesn't show up to actually. And I understand there's needs out there, absolutely, but we always have to be cognizant of we're continuing to borrow into the future for our children, and that's something that we got to continue to work on.
For sure.
My summary point, I guess.
Thank you, Paul. The connection's poor this morning, but we are out of time. But thanks for the call this morning. Okay, take care. I couldn't really hear if he said goodbye or not, but I think he did. All right, final check-in on the Twitter for the week. I don't do a whole lot of scrolling over the course of the weekend, for obvious reasons. We're VOCM Open Line. You know what to do. Follow us there. Suggestions, questions, concerns. Email address is openline@vocm.com. And we will indeed pick up this conversation again on Monday morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, Greg Smith, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy weekend. We'll talk Monday. Bye-bye. Ryan
Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.